Okay, let's move on to Councilor Bassan, and then we'll try to get Councilor Pena back on the line.
Thank you, Madam President. My question has come from several emails and phone calls, different pieces of information that have come to me, and I think that for the public's interest and to say that we are doing our best to listen to them and answer any questions that we receive, I would like to say that it has come to my attention that APD Acting Chief Harlod Medina is under investigation, Chief Medina is under investigation for allegedly interfering with the arrest of a family member who had 2 outstanding warrants. Is the administration able to clarify this further for the public?
Council President Borrego, Councilor Bassan, I am aware of the false rumors being spread by disgruntled former employees who have been trying really for the past year to discredit Chief Medina in an attempt to cover up for their own shortcomings. And this is exactly the kind of drama that required a change in leadership over there. The former chief actually raised these false allegations last year in June. And it's no coincidence that we've recently gotten NIPA requests from his attorney, and these rumors are being spread falsely on social media. But I think they show that, there are lots of folks who want to prevent Chief Medina from being the chief of police through insinuation and false allegations. But what I'd really like to do is allow him to explain it directly. But I will say that this really, in my mind, crossed a line in the sense that they are re-victimizing Chief Medina's son, who is openly gay and has been the victim of vicious acts of domestic violence and stalking. I want to thank you, Councilor Bassan, for the respectful way in which you've handled, balancing the need to bring some of this matter into the light, and also while being respectful of the experience that Chief Medina's son has undergone. And with that, I'll turn it over to the chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief. Would you like to respond?
Yes, councilors, Madam President, members of council, thank you for the opportunity. My son was the victim of domestic violence in 2019 when he contacted the police to provide an escort while he returned to get personal property and belongings at the apartment he shared with his abuser. During the encounter, my son told officers about the abuse that occurred the night before, as well as a history of abuse against him. Officers also spoke with the abuser. I was not present, nor was I involved in the encounter. My son was allowed to get his belongings and leave. We have the video from the officers that will show the entire encounter. My son's abuser told police that my son had a misdemeanor warrant for DWI at the time of the incident. We also learned from my son his abuser often threatened to tell police about the warrant if my son ever reported their abusive relationship. My son later took care of his warrants through the court system. At the end of the encounter, the officers told my son he couldn't promise my son that charges wouldn't be brought against his abuser, but the officer provided my son with the domestic violence packet, which guided my son to seek out resources. In fact, my son was able to use those resources to file a restraining order against his abuser and further document other incidents, which include stalking. My son's abuser would later call police and accuse my son of violating the restraining order. However, a judge threw out those charges because the restraining order was against the abuser, not my son. I appreciate my son was able to access resources available to victims of domestic violence. He took advantage of those resources, and he was brave for doing so. But it is despicable that the system as a whole failed him. When these rumors started last year, my son was afraid. He would be re-victimized, and he moved out of state. The reason I became a police officer was to serve the public and protect the community. Though that is especially true of victims of crime, nobody should have to move or feel shame because they have been victimized. Thank you, councilors.